With TSD Talks.
Hello everyone, I'm the fading consciousness of a young bear. The light is going, strange noises are all around me. Digesting in my stomach are the salmon and rabbits I was feeding on before whatever before me befell me. It was a nice life, but it's over now. But what's this? I'm coming to in what appears to be a vast cavern, and all manner of creatures, mostly with some amount of missing limbs or appendages, are populating this space. There's even a tiny worm twitching on the ground. Oh. Yes, that's right. We are in the afterlife of the animals RFK Jr. killed, ate, or tried to eat. To my left is a headless whale. TSD, how are you doing?
I never know where you're going to go with these. I guess I'm the headless whale in this metaphor, aren't I?
You're the headless whale. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I got here after being strapped to a car for 5 hours, so.
Yeah, I was in a car myself actually.
And we've also got. I don't know how you want to represent it.
Well, yeah. If you want to look just to your right, you'll probably see a very crispy looking dog. Pentex Productions. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. I thought you might have been going for a murdered penguin.
Well, I really wanted to, but I scoured the web and I couldn't find any, stories or data, however spurious of RFK Jr. killing a penguin. I'm sure he's done it. It probably just wasn't caught on tape to the degree the other ones were. So there would have been some nice synergy there. Sadly.
Yeah, it's disappointing. He didn't really think that through.
No.
He wasn't thinking about us either.
Thought of the podcast.
No one thinks about the podcasters.
He should have been the whale.
That's really what's wrong. He should.
Penguins and whales are both marine animals.
Yeah, they're both about the same.
Yeah, it's kind of in keeping with the theme, right? Like, you break into the nearest zoo. Like, some penguins aren't very big. I mean, think it through.
He probably wouldn't even have to break in. He's like a Kennedy, right? And people treat them like royalty. So he could probably just go in and just pick a penguin.
Well, he could probably get into a zoo pretty easily because he could probably just rock up with whichever like sort of half dead animal is in his vicinity at that point and just be like, hey, I've got an elk with no forelegs right now. Can we get in and go to the elk resuscitation unit? And they probably just let him right in. But
that is how zoos
RFK
work.
Jr. not thinking ahead. The worm might have been thinking ahead, but why don't we think ahead and start to move out of this strange opening bit?
It's not really that strange by our standards.
No, because this one's actually rooted in more kind of truth. I was looking up the facts of the case, obviously, before crafting that odd little intro. He's a strange guy, isn't he? RFK Jr.
He is.
Yeah, I try to avoid just reading about any of that as much as possible. I can recommend to a friend.
Yeah. I do try to avoid consuming US sort of election news as much as possible, but I make an exception for RFK Jr. because he's one of God's little weirdos, He's been blessed with the limelight.
In 20 years' time, someone's going to make a biopic of that, and like no one's going to believe it. People are going to be like, "Come on, like that didn't really happen."
Yeah, It's odd to think that like just a few weeks ago he was possibly the strangest candidate in an election that included Donald Trump.
Yeah, that would have been the good ending as well. That would have split the strange idiot vote and let the lesser evil get in. But again, that would have been better for us. He wasn't thinking of the podcasters. He never thinks of the podcasters. But
he thinks of Joe
someone
Rogan.
Who is a podcaster today.
He's been on Joe Rogan a bunch.
Yeah, well, not to start no true podcasting around, but Joe Rogan, he's got a set. He's got people who do his editing. He's got assistants. I feel like that's not quite in keeping with the rough and ready podcasting spirit that really built this great online kind of cultural nation.
You mean to tell me that the man who has $100 million dollar deal with Spotify is not actually all that representative?
Yeah,
of the
I don't think
working
he's a
class?
podcaster. I think he's a glorified he's a radio host is what he is. Let's not mince our words. Let's not pretend otherwise. You gotta have very little plan and very few resources to be a podcaster. That's how I see it, anyway.
Right. Anyway.
Yeah, let's slide smoothly out of that. Introducing today's very special guest, Pentex Productions, or Pentex for short. You're a little cool penguin guy, and you're also by far the biggest guest we've had on here so far. So thanks.
That's
for coming
true,
on.
isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be here. I feel like we've been talking about setting this up for almost since you started the podcast. So it's great that we finally actually made it work.
Yeah. And originally we were talking about having you on for episode 007, which would have fit quite well because you do a bit of James Bonding on your channel. For anyone who isn't super familiar with you already, if those people exist and are listening to this podcast, do you want to say a little bit about yourself, what you do, kind of what niche you're in, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Pentex from Pentex Productions. I make long-form video essays on YouTube looking at kind of all sorts of film and pop culture sort of things, but there tends to end up being quite a lot of focus on James Bond and Lord of the Rings.
I know you probably get this comparison a lot since you're both from New Zealand, but you're kind of like Hello Future Me, but instead of Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's James Bond.
Yeah, for sure. Tim's he kind of set the standard for New Zealand YouTubers. He's great and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's funny. I do get comments on my videos being like, "You sound a lot like Hello Future Me. Are you the same person?" And it's like, I don't think I've got anywhere near as strong a New Zealand accent as he does. But I think, like, who knows? People just here in New Zealand are talking about Lord of the Rings, and they're like, "Oh, it must be that guy doing it on a different channel for some reason."
Little do they know, hey, there's a whole country of you guys. They'd have their minds blown. Their heads would spin 360 degrees.
They would. There's at least 10 of us have a YouTube channel. So
everyone knows that there are only two people who live in New Zealand: Hello Future Me, Tim, and Taika Waititi. Those are the only two people who are from New Zealand that exist.
That's right. Yeah, and
legacy.
neither of them actually live in New Zealand anymore. So.
It's because New Zealand isn't real. It disappeared off all the maps.
Yeah, it's not on any of those
maps,
is it? If it was real, it'd probably be on the maps.
That's very true. Yeah, we designed it that way. We want to kind of, just hang out in our own little corner of the world.
This is going to show my ignorance, so forgive me. I know that there was like a contest, a few years ago or something, or however long it was ago, to have the New Zealand flag be changed to that laser eye kiwi. Did that ever actually end up happening, or was that just like no? It's
a big disappointment. We never got laser kiwi as the official flag. The government at the time held like a public referendum to change the flag because our current flag's a bit boring and it looks very similar to Australia's, and so they're like, why don't we modernize it and update it? And so what they did was they opened submissions to the public and they said, look, anyone can submit a flag design. And so that went about as well as could be expected. Yeah. They had this website up that had all of the designs there, and people found this one of it's a black flag with the white silver fern that you might have seen at like sports matches and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's got like a cartoon kiwi firing laser beams out of its eyes, and the internet kind of adopted this as the obvious choice for what the new New Zealand flag should be.
I mean, it should have been,
and it didn't get voted in. So, that's disappointing.
Oh, well.
I mean, it's just another evidence point in the argument for never letting the internet cook.
That's right. Well, I mean, if it was a Boaty McBoatface situation, then we could have ended up with the most unique flag in the world. But, the government decided it wasn't serious enough.
Boaty McBoatface and his consequences.
Did you guys hear about that story there's a million stories like this, because this is what happens every single time that the internet is in charge of making a decision. But there's like a story of like a Chinese like cereal mascot where they held like an online competition for to decide like of which new brand they would make, and one of the options was chocolate flavored, and the other option was green onion flavored. And the idea was that everyone would vote for the chocolate one because it'd be little kids who don't like the flavor of green onions, because green onions have kind of the same like cultural stigma that like broccoli does in America. I don't know if that's the same like for you guys, but generally broccoli is seen as like the vegetable that kids don't like. So, but then the internet got a hold of it, and they're like, oh, it would be really funny if they ended up making the green onion cereal instead of the chocolate. So they like voted en masse, and it ended up actually winning. But the company like freaked out and didn't realize this was a possibility that happened. So they shut down the poll, and then they made the chocolate cereal anyways. And because it was just another example of the election.
Democracy is a sham.
Democracy being a sham. The election that was stolen. Apparently, eventually they did make the green onion cereal as like a limited release, novelty program, and it, tasted terrible because it was green onion fucking cereal. But it's just one of those stories.
Tell you what, I didn't even realize you could get green onions. Whenever my onions start going green, I throw them away, Cooking with a pillar of garbage. What is the most reviled vegetable, though? I think over here it's probably sprouts. Brussels sprouts are probably, the kind of
a big one.
Archetype of, kids don't like
that's
them.
always like the go-to, right? People always pick that, but I don't. I haven't ever researched this anymore in detail, but I've seen a comment on the internet, so that's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
apparently, over the last 10, 20 years or so, they've kind of slowly changed the way that they grow Brussels sprouts. And all these people are like, oh my God, this is the first time I've had a Brussels sprout and it's delicious. And it's like Brussels sprouts themselves have actually changed in taste to be less bitter over time. You know how if you ate an apple 50 years ago, it wouldn't be as sweet as one.
Oh, bananas are a whole thing there, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. And apparently the same things happen with Brussels sprouts, but no one's eaten them since they were a kid. And so now everyone's like, oh, Brussels sprouts are quite good. And yeah, if you cook them in a bit of butter with some bacon or something on
Get
the
some
side,
chorizo
they
up in
can be
there,
pretty
yeah.
good.
That is crazy, though. Every day there is another psyop.
this
big Brussels sprout.
It's a big old cover up of Brussels sprouts. Actually, they're removing the Brussels sprouts original flavor. We got to make Brussels sprouts great again.
Yeah, I mean that's a platform to run on.
the reference.
We really looked into the kind of election discourse this week.
I think the world needs more discussion of U.S. politics. I think
Yeah.
We might be the ones to really crack it.
I'm so sorry, guys. It's I live here, and it's brain rotted into me, just because I'm so inundated with everything. But
we would not understand the asylum you were raised in.
But here's the thing, though. It could be worse, though, right? Because I'm in Washington, which is a pretty solidly blue state. So that means that it's not a swing state, so there's not a lot of there is still election, mainstream coverage, and there's stuff there are some political ads for smaller races, but there's not a bunch of stuff for the presidential race because, Washington's gonna go for the Democrats no matter what happens. But if you live in Pennsylvania, which is considered the most important swing state of the entire election. I have friends who live in Pennsylvania, and they say they literally cannot go 20 minutes without seeing a political ad for either, for Kamala Harris or for Trump or any of the other things, because they're pouring so much money into advertising. So, I can't.
Is it not Washington though that has the is it the Greater Idaho Secession movement?
Probably, but that's mostly just because
so you better not throw any stones from your glass house there, TSD. you got a bunch of loonies just like the rest of your countrymen. I say from my very very sane vantage point of Turf Island.
Anyway,
Pentex. So you're from New Zealand, but you've been living here for a while. Are things more or less crazy in the UK than down under, would you say?
They're more crazy here for sure.
Yeah,
New Zealand politics tends to be pretty chill. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk about New Zealand politics in a whole lot of detail.
We don't have to talk about
it's such
American
a small
politics
country,
either.
and everyone. But yeah, it's such a small country, and it's relatively chill about lots of things. I don't know. Our entire the spectrum of our political, the far left party and the far right party are could probably all be contained within like the Democrats in America,
Nice.
for example. Like it's a pretty narrow band of political discourse over
Maybe
New
I should move to
Zealand.
New
This is
Zealand.
why we get so riled up about the flag.
Yeah, you got nothing else
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, it's the most controversial thing to happen.
If we're not going to talk about New Zealand politics, I will just put my 39-page essay on, my critique of Jacinda Ardern's premiership to one side, and we can move on to one thing I wanted to talk about, and I thought this would be a great idea. Bringing you on for this would be a great idea, is because TSD was mentioning that Washington is solidly blue, but do you know what else is solidly blue? A lot of the text boxes on your thumbnails, Pentex. I think, here's my observation for today, it's pretty hard to get people to click on videos that kind of spread over a wide variety of topics. And of all the YouTubers I've kind of known or spoken to, I think you've got the best, least obtrusive, but most recognizable branding out there. So what's going on there? What was the thought process? How did that start?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I always stress out so much about thumbnail design, and I never feel like they're particularly effective. So it's nice of you to say that. It's funny because it's evolved quite a lot over time. Some of my early thumbnails I look back on with horror. But I think in the last year, I think in the last year and a half, I think I've kind of refined the format a little bit. But the blue and white text has been there more or less from the start in some form or another. And I think it's because one of the big reasons for that was, like you, Pog, I'm a faceless YouTuber, so I don't show myself on camera. And so a lot of thumbnail design, particularly as channels start to get bigger, features the face of the creator, and that's a great way to get clicks and so on and so on. And it's like, I can't do that. So I can't show someone within the thumbnail just by using my face that it's one of my videos. And so I decided I'd pick out the blue that I tend to use. It's the color of the penguin, which is the kind of avatar I have in the videos, and it's kind of a recurring color on the captions and stuff in the videos as well. So I was like, I'll take that blue, that shade of blue, and use that as the backdrop for some white text that I can use to kind of catch people's eye. And hopefully over time, people will see that blue and white text combination and recognize that it's one of my videos. Obviously, the detail comes with what image do you put it over and what you actually have the text say. And I think that's the thing that's changed the most over the course of my channel being active.
Yeah, it's a really nice shade of blue too. Like it's a good thing that you didn't have like an avatar that was like a bright yellow lobster or something. It's
I spent
all of those bright yellow lobsters you see around.
I spent an embarrassingly long time sitting with a color wheel trying to find the right shade of blue. So I don't know if I got it right, but that's the one I've kept with.
It's a good one.
Yeah. No one else is using it. That's particular hex code.
Yeah, and you can see this in some of the earlier thumbnails of my videos. At first, I had a little kind of triangle in the corner that had a little picture of my penguin in it. It was a little blue triangle that kind of like overlaid over the thumbnail, and I used that for a time, and it's still on some of my earlier videos, but it always tended to just get in the way of the rest of the thumbnail. And when I took that away, I actually think the thumbnails ended up improving, and I also was probably putting a bit too much thought into the idea that people would see that and think it was one of my videos, because if you notice that, you probably notice the little icon half an inch below it showing that it's my channel. So
I've never been able to nail down like a good like specific thumbnail style. I kind of just go with whatever my gut kind of feels like in the moment.
Honestly, same.
Like I actually, Pillar, I think you have a fairly recognizable style where you use the exact same font in pretty much all of your videos.
I use the same font on like 90% of them. Yeah,
like it, and that really signifies like, to me at least. But that might just be because I've known you and I know what your videos look like. So I could be biased there. Yeah, but like
it's not as strong. It's not as strong a brand, and other people use it too, because it's like if you Google like cool impact kind of like big sort of bold fonts or whatever, get a list of fun free ones. It's this one, Babus, is always number one on those lists.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good font.
It's not very original. It's a good font, yeah.
But I kind of just I kind of just like, I think that's part of me is also I don't have a specific style that I've nailed down as much. Like you guys have like, niches and stuff that you found. I'm still kind of feeling out after 4 years, I'm still feeling out like exactly what I want to do. But I think it's good to like hear about the process behind coming up with this kind of, branding a little bit. And it helps people and it helps me like consider what goes into that specifically. I guess my mindset has always been, sorry, I'll finish.
No, go ahead.
Do your thing. I think that my frame of mind is that like, once I find something that I like, once I'm consistent and found a content niche that I like, I'll probably stick more with like the branding after that kind of a thing. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, numerically in terms of subscribers, I'm a bit bigger than you are, Pentex, but I always notice you tend to have a higher views floor than I do. I looking at your uploads, I always look at them, and it's rare that it's rare to see a big outlier on the kind of downward side. I think you've had maybe a couple in the past year that have been in the sort of 10, 20K range, and then past that, they tend to do a lot better. And this isn't completely unfounded, but one of the things when I'm doing my thumbnails and I'm thinking, how can I make a good thumbnail while also maybe trying to bring across that it's a pill or a garbage thumbnail? One of the reasons I beat myself up about not having established a stronger brand is because I look at, channels like yours and I think maybe it is the blue, maybe it's the blue that kind of just friendly waves to the viewer and just says, hey, it's me, the guy from the channel you were watching on before. Why not watch this one too? And I don't think my kind of stark white font choice does that quite as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how like even just something as simple as a color can be enough to be distinctive. I mean, I feel the kind of channel floor, the channel has been doing pretty well over the last year or so. It's probably its best its most consistent period it's ever had, which is always really gratifying to see. But I found with a lot of my recent videos, they're really slow burns. What I had in the first kind of I've been doing my channel about 4 years now, and I think the first like 2 or 3 years I tended to notice kind of a video would come out and either it would flatline immediately or it would have a big spike. And for like the first week, it would be going up and up in views, and then it would level off. And what I've been finding my videos recently, and I don't know if this is a change in the algorithm or a change in the way my videos are being watched, but it's kind of they always start off in the first couple of days. I'm looking at it being like, oh my god, it's only had like X number of views, but then it just continues to get the same number of views day after day after day after day. And I check back after 4 weeks, and it's it's doing really well. And it's just an interesting change in the kind of viewer behavior that I have no idea what to put down. But it also shows how the idea of success on YouTube changes very quickly. Like when I look at a video and I'm like, it's only got like 5,000 views or something. And I think back to 2 years ago and it's like,
exactly.
Loved that. That would have been the biggest video on the channel. So you can never, it's like the, what's the guy pushing the rock up the hill, like the impossible
Sisyphus?
Sisyphus,
who's Sisyphus?
We'll go with that.
Yeah, it's who has a very famous essay about him written by Albert Camus, which I now know because I mentioned it in a video and I pronounced his name Albert Camus. And
do you say Camus?
And the comment section tore me a new one for that.
Yeah, they kindly educated you. Hey, here's the thing. Here's that platitude that the internet loves to bring out, but it is true, When you hear someone mispronounce a word, that's because they've only read it before, So maybe we shouldn't just beat up on each other for being avid, voracious readers, Think about that one.
That's true.
But to your point,
there's that thing where it's like the best, if you want to get the correct answer on the internet quickly, you should post the wrong answer instead of asking the question. So I think that's the best way to find out the pronunciation.
Yeah. For all of you in the comments, I think that's called Cole's Law.
Yeah.
I'm saying that with 100% certainty that it is.
That's the way to boost the podcast viewership. Just spell out a bunch of wrong things, and we'll get thousands of experts. clambering in to set us right.
But to your point, Pentex, about like the standards for success changing, we've talked about this before on the cast, on the pod, whatever. But also a little bit ago, I got like a old social media memory or something that was like, here's like a story you posted from like 3 years ago, blah 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 blah, and it showed me like something I had posted about being really excited that a video of mine had gotten like 30 views. I was like, oh my God, 30 views. What? It's only been 2 days. And, now.
Yeah, the best way to do is just look out the window and try and imagine all the people in the numbers, because even if you get the gray arrow, even if it says the video's underperforming or whatever, and it says like, so many hundred or so many thousand, just imagine like you're in a room and the amount of people that have watched your video or listened to your thing or, played your song or whatever are actually there, and it puts it into perspective, and all the sort of binary bit brain rot nonsense of the internet and the algorithms and the the horrible shapes and numbers that make you feel like rubbish for not making art well enough online, that all kind of melts away, in theory.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it's the numbers can be a bit difficult to reconcile, but yeah, when you try to think of what 5,000 people in a room would look like, I mean, that's a pretty big room. But yeah, coming back to branding, I mean, Pog, I think your branding, I think that the font choice is quite distinctive. And I think the way in which you kind of construct your thumbnails is distinctive. But I mean, you and I both have the same challenge, and TSD, you were talking about this before as well, where our videos aren't necessarily all in the same niche. There's some channels and they'll only post about Marvel, or they'll only post about Star Wars or whatever. And I think it's very easy to build up a thumbnail pattern or a style of recognition in the branding that way, because it's the same person talking about the same thing.
That's why there's so many
that way. Whereas when you've got sorry, carry on.
No, sorry. Like, I'll let you finish your thought. But that's why there's so many YouTubers who are like on the spectrum. Like, I'm citing myself in this, but someone who can just talk about the same thing for hours and hours and then week after week is going to get so much success on YouTube because the niche will be driven to them. This is like a completely unscientific observation on my part, but I've noticed in like influencer and cycles, like it feels like every other week I see like a new like social media person being like, hey, I actually have like autism. Hey, I actually have like ADHD. And it's like, wow, I wonder why you sit in front of a computer talking about the exact same thing for hours on end and you still do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the online content kind of lifestyle, maybe there's a sort of a slight filtering out of completely neurotypical people in terms of that.
Yeah, and I do think YouTube in particular it definitely rewards channels that have niches. In a way that I've always struggled with, because it's like my videos tend to take the better part of a month to make because I don't work on it full time, and so if I'm going to be sitting with something for a month, I really want to enjoy it. And if I've sat with The Lord of the Rings for a month, it's like, okay, let's have a break from that, let's talk about something else. But
yeah, exactly.
You get 100,000 people watch a Lord of the Rings video, come to the channel and sign up, and then the next thing you put in front of them is talking about like some obscure Peter Jackson documentary, and it's going to be like, those people, it's a completely different audience because they've got different interests, and YouTube puts them in different boxes. And so I can understand why people niche down like that. But yeah, I just couldn't do it because I just get bored.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, actually, because one thing I wanted to sort of ask you, whether on this podcast or off it actually, was how do you kind of see your own niche or lack thereof? Because when I see a Pentex, when I see Pentex has uploaded a new thing, like, I think I would assume that it's going to be a video on either kind of analyzing or going behind the scenes on something cinema related, but not necessarily kind of like pop culture fandom cinema, maybe kind of more blockbuster / prestige cinema. Like, is that do you think of your content in that kind of terms, or is it just you literally, it is just you make a video on whatever's caught your interest that month, and it sort of orbits cinema in a very broad sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, and it's one I ask myself every day. But yeah, my like I guess like mission statement for the channel, like the reason I started it was like I wanted to make the kinds of videos that I would want to watch.
Yeah.
So the starting point for it was just simply that. It's like I'd have an idea for a video and it'd be like, oh, no one's made a video about that topic. Well, why don't I make it? And that's where it started, and that kind of is still where I'm at with it. And it's helpful because it's not my job. Like I've got a day job, and so because it's not a job, I can I have a bit more flexibility to experiment with stuff. I don't always have to be kind of chasing the algorithm, which is a real luxury. But it did take a while to find the niche. I think in the last, I think this might have been one of the reasons the channel's been a bit more consistent. I think my early videos were a bit scattergun in terms of the topic I'd choose or how I'd frame it or the style of editing and all the rest of it. But yeah, in the last 18 months or so, it has kind of refined itself a little bit into a formula where, I kind of talk about a movie, and there's a bit of that kind of traditional film analysis where you talk about why a particular scene or movie works and why it doesn't. But I always try to go a bit further than that, and I try to include a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, some of the interviews with the cast or the director or things like that, because there is a huge amount of information about how a movie got made, why it got made, that I find really interesting. And I think understanding the circumstances of a movie being made helps explain why the final movie looks the way it does. And so that's kind of the way a lot of the recent videos have kind of been structured. It's kind of like, okay, I want to talk about this movie, but there's this whole, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's all this other stuff that went on with it. And when you know about that, it helps explain what you're watching in the movie. And I think particularly now, like when I was growing up, and this is me, being the old man here, but like I consumed like DVD behind the scenes features, like there was no tomorrow. And those have kind of been lost in a way. Now that we don't have physical media, we don't. Yeah. You don't see that anymore.
People don't talk about the loss of those either. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was this whole genre. Like every movie that would be made when it came out on home media, it would have all this behind the scenes stuff, and some was better than others. But you generally at least have like an audio commentary with the director, or some other stuff, and that just doesn't really exist anymore. You get these real like puff piece promo videos on YouTube that are like 2 minutes long and say nothing. Yeah. And so I find, especially with the videos, with the movies that I make, because they are a bit older,
Emma Watson playing with puppies
like
for 10 minutes,
Rings and the James Bond movies. Particularly with the Lord of the Rings and the James Bond movies, like there is this archive of stuff if you can get a hold of the DVDs, and so you can actually kind of bring that information to a whole new audience who wouldn't necessarily have known it just because. So like the Lord of the Rings videos, I'm always like, I'm just repeating stuff that's in the behind the scenes material. Surely everyone's seen that. And no, they haven't. Because those movies came out 25 years ago.
When you're in the weeds of like a piece of media and like the information and the lore around it, it's kind of hard to, it's easy to overestimate how much your audience knows about things. And like, I can kind of speak to this a little bit because recently I first of all, I had my X-Men video, which was like, I didn't, do a full research thesis on it or anything, but I did a bit of like digging into the background of things. So I thought it was interesting. And then also recently I've been really in the weeds of like Gravity Falls stuff, just because previously meant some kind of reference to the fact that I also am in that neurodivergent camp. But something I discovered about Gravity Falls is that because it's such a short show, they made a commentary track for every single episode. Sometimes they made multiple commentary tracks for some episodes. And listening to those, you learn so much about the show creators' process behind making something, and it helps you understand like how the show got made and how, if you were to tell your own stories, how you could apply the lessons from that into there. And it's not the same kind of stuff that you would get from like watching like a video essay on YouTube generally, because that's usually just analyzing from an audience's perspective. So I feel like I definitely agree that it's kind of an art that's being lost, that of like the commentary track and the behind the scenes. featurette. And that's really sad because I feel like that those are one of the most valuable resources for aspiring, creatives to really understand the art that they're working with.
Interestingly, I was just going to say, it's not exactly the same, but obviously the media's changed, but the fan interest in the media hasn't. And that's been, I think, one of the ways that's been sort of accounted for and maybe detected, the magical invisible hand of the free market has accounted for that, is some things, particularly I'm thinking of The Good Place, the people behind the scenes who are clearly still wanting to share that knowledge. In podcast form, you will find a lot of the same sort of like nuggets of information and anecdotes and, behind the scenes stuff that you would have done in the extras or on the commentary tracks. And it's not for everything, but like The Good Place has a really good podcast that it goes episode by episode. They have guests.
It's hosted by
philosophy about making it.
Sean Jackson Harper, I think. No.
Yeah. He's one of the guys in the show. Mark Evan.
Mark Evan Jackson. Yeah.
That's him. Yeah. And also recently, I don't think it's quite the same as that, but one other way this kind of lost trove of information is being sort of clawed back a little is in the kind of post-COVID rewatch podcasts that started springing up, like The Office Ladies, and there was a New Girl one. And so, even though all these things went away, here and there, they're kind of almost popping up in a kind of different way. And it's interesting to see the way that, though the kind of the media changes and the formal conventions of what the physical or digital media will allow change, the desire to connect in bigger ways outside the text itself is still there on both ends, like on the creator end or on the fan end. And, it's just mutating a bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very true, and I think you tend to see that particularly with creators like that who are really passionate about the work that they did. You've got some people who they're just doing making the movie for the paycheck sort of thing. But when people are really passionate about it, they do tend to find a way to talk about it. And yeah, you can find like long form interviews, and even home media does still exist in some formats. Like the Oppenheimer release has all sorts of stuff. It was amazing. So there is, I agree, there is stuff out there. It's just not quite as straightforward to find as it used to be.
Like you'll never see like Harrison Ford on a commentary track for Star Wars kind of thing, or on a rewatch podcast, I should say.
Harrison Ford should make a rewatch podcast for every of the Disney Plus. Surely that's like $1 trillion podcast idea.
It's not even a rewatch podcast because I doubt he's watched any of them. Some of us are thinking about
the podcasters.
I doubt he's watched any of them. Like it's probably just going to be
Harrison
a watch.
Ford's first impression.
Maybe it's not even like a
man gets confused.
It might not even be a post show thing. It's just like a commentary track of him like live reacting to it. It's like, wait, who's that? Wait, what's going on? Which it
goes so hard.
But Pentex, before we like move on, I kind of wanted to chat a little bit about one of your videos that you made, a couple. The first one was the one you made about Rebel Moon. I thought was really interesting, and I watched it back when Pillar first suggested we bring you on, and I wanted to get kind of familiar with your content, and so my memory might be a little bit fuzzy because it was a little bit since I watched it, but I remember watching it and thinking like, this is probably the best video that anyone's ever going to make about Rebel Moon Part 1. Because there's so much that doesn't work about that movie, and it doesn't really attract an audience that's really interested in interrogating why it doesn't work. Like with the one major exception, I think.
Yeah, that's not the Snyder fan archetype, is it? Yeah. They're not known for their
but it's
media analysis.
I really liked your video because you really tackled it from like a perspective of like, well, this is something that like didn't have to be awful, like it's kind of a Star Wars riff, there's a lot of like derivative qualities to it, but like there's cores and nuggets of things that are interesting that could be good. And so the way that you explored that and the way you talked about like why it was so frustrating that it was bad, it's like there's a lot of media criticism on YouTube that kind of feels like gleefully ripping something apart, and that can be fun sometimes, but it feels to me it's much more interesting and constructive when there's like media that is, are pretty much tearing something apart still, but it's tearing it from a place of like, this could have been so good, and I hope that we can use this to learn from the mistakes rather than just like blind hatred. And I just wanted to like commend you for that, because I thought that was a really good video. I don't think I would have even thought to have made after watching that movie.
Thanks. Yeah, that's an example of the sort of video where it's like, man, I can't believe I have to spend the next month thinking about and watching scenes from like the worst movie I've seen in a long time. But yeah, it was I try not to make like negative videos on the channel because, yeah, like you say, there's so much negative media criticism on the internet, and most of it, well, not most of it, but a lot of it comes from a pretty bad faith sort of place, as Pog has covered extensively on his channel. And it just doesn't interest me at all. And I figure if you're going to criticize something and if you're going to put the work into talking about it, then at least try and make it constructive. Yeah, and I think with the Rebel Moon one, it was about being like, what were you trying to achieve with this movie, and why didn't it work? And so that was another thing where I didn't just watch the movie. I sat through interviews with Zack Snyder and the cast, and you hear them all talk about this stuff, and they would go on and on about, the world they created and all this backstory and all this lore and all the rest of it, as if the existence of some encyclopedic backstory justifies the fact that the movie has zero characterization and doesn't do anything interesting with all of that. And so, yeah, that was kind of where that video was coming from. It was trying to be like, you were trying to do a thing. This is what you were trying to do. I don't think you did it. And this is why. And the why ends up being about half as long as the movie itself is. So I basically just go through every scene, and I'm like, and I do start with a bit where I'm like, these are the things I liked about the movie, and I think that section's about 3 minutes in an hour-long video. But I was trying to be like, look, this didn't have to be what it was, and you could do better.
Yeah, because like the thing is, like,
it's easy.
I was just gonna say that, like, it's the thing is, like, Zack Snyder, for everything you want to say about him, there are a lot of things you can say about Zack Snyder, but one thing you can't say is that he like doesn't care about what he's doing. Like this is like every interview I've ever seen with him, even if he's saying something like that I vehemently disagree with, he clearly gives a shit about what he's talking about, and like he clearly like wants to make good movies, and sometimes he does make good movies. But like, so that analyzing like why something went wrong is so much more interesting, because it's clear, because the answer is not going to be, because the director hates you and wanted to make a bad movie. And that feels like it's the narrative that gets sold so much in like the most innocuous of things.
I was just going to say, it's super easy to be really sort of derisory about a bad movie, and it's pretty easy to be, sympathetic and full of praise about a good movie. But it is a lot harder to be sympathetic to a bad movie or a movie you don't like. And I always think of your Rebel Moon video alongside, in my head, I don't know if either of you guys saw Nando V Movie's video on Madam Web, which kind of came from a similar place. And it was all about, it was also like a mammoth length attempt to get inside the minds behind a really awful cinematic product and figure out what they were going for and the kind of the gaps between their aim and the finished product. And I think those videos are always a bunch of fun if the person doing them, has the kind of skills for it. Yeah, if you ever feel like putting yourself through, taking on such another kind of masochistic video project like that, I know I'd be looking forward to watching that.
Yeah, I actually put a poll up on my channel, being like, look, Rebel Moon Part 2 is out. Do you, like, I will make a video if you want me to make it, but I really don't want to watch this movie. Yeah. And I put a poll out saying basically, asking my audience, no, like, I would never make anyone suffer through Rebel Moon Part 2, or yes, like, give us the video, suffer for your art. And actually, my audience voted no, we don't want the video.
Amazing.
I was really happy about, and I was also like, wait, you don't want me to make it? So I was conflicted in terms of that response, but I was so happy that they told me I didn't have to make a follow-up video. So I still haven't seen part 2, and I never plan to. But
Yeah,
I
why
do
would
owe
you?
my Patreon. I owe my Patreons a video looking at the director's cut, which I need to get around to watching and making, because in my video there's that whole thing about the director's cut, and this was an example of trying to understand where Snyder and everyone was coming from with it, because inevitably everyone was like, oh, but you need to wait for the Snyder cut because that'll actually be the good one. And I played interviews from Snyder himself saying he was proud of the PG cut, and he was like, that's a really good story, I really like it, I'm really happy with it, and talked about how they made the decision from the start that there would be 2 versions of this. This wasn't like I made a cool R-rated movie and then Netflix made me cut it down to a PG version. From the start, there were going to be 2 versions. And so I talked about that to be like, you're allowed to judge this movie based on the cut that he chose to release and that he has said he's happy with, and that they planned from the start to make. You don't get to dismiss this one being like, oh, but wait for the director's cut, it'll be better, because he decided to put it out like this. But I did say that I would review the director's cut for my patrons, and I haven't done that yet. So
Yeah.
I mean, that poll more than anything else speaks to it speaks pretty well of the audience that you've amassed, that they don't just want to see someone make themselves miserable watching bad stuff for capital C content.
Yeah. I also think I suspect this will be the case when I eventually get around to watching the director's cut as well, but I imagine the issues in part 2 will be exactly the same as the ones in part 1, and so I don't think the video would actually end up saying anything new, because I can't see the substantive issues being different because they're filmed back to back and everything. So I also don't think it would have been a super interesting video, because I wouldn't be saying anything new in it.
Yeah. I had a friend who actually has been on the podcast before, Daniel. He and his I want to say partner watched the part 2, and he told me that there wasn't really anything interesting that happened that was significantly worse or whatever than the first one. The only thing of note was that it seemed like less happened in the first one, less happened than in the first one, which that's something. But I agree, it doesn't seem like it would be even that interesting of a video, because the only if you don't just want to repeat yourself for every video you make, especially if you're going to be spending a month doing it and torturing yourself over doing it. So I definitely respect that framing. I would be, if you do end up making a public video about the director's cut, if it's any different at all, that would be interesting, because I have heard literally nothing about the director's cut since it came out.
Yeah, I think Netflix pretty much buried it. When I eventually make that video, I'll send you a link.
All right. Well,
ooh, looking behind the curtains.
Yeah. Little special
That's
YouTube
that backstage access.
Little special YouTuber privileges.
Backstage pass. Yeah. I'll send you a link and an invoice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Always be on that grind set.
With that, I think it'd be a good time to move on to our world famous section, Comment Corner. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Love Comment Corner.
Sounds good.
All right.
You're right fucking shit, you are.
Well, technically that isn't true. They can
I see the British are analysing our American characters.
I'm sorry, but I'm offended by that content warning. I don't think you should include
but I'm
him for the
offended
rest
by
of them like he
it.
is in political. I know they're not racist because I've been watching them for years.
Asian, baby.
Channel name checks out.
It's Comment Corner.
So, usually, I can't remember if this is actually true, but I'm just going to say it's true for the sake of the bit. But usually our tradition is to have the guest show their first comment. That's, I'm now thinking about that, it's definitely not true, but I think it's a good tradition we could start. So
yeah, we should start doing that.
Pentex,
you want to take the floor? The floor is yours. Any comments for us?
Yeah, you're 11 episodes in. It's a good time to start getting those traditions kicking along. Yes, I went through. I picked out a few things. Generally, my comment section is actually pretty good. I always hear you always hear about how terrible YouTube comment sections are. But my comments, I mean, 99% of them, like, they're super positive or like insightful or interesting or whatever, and the ones that aren't, I don't tend to worry about too much. But it's actually really nice. Like, I don't think I'd necessarily have kept doing this as a hobby as much if the comments hadn't been as... Sorry, I've got a cat going rogue.
Yeah, but that's all right. This podcast is well used to cat shenanigans interrupting the flow.
Yeah.
I think our listeners come to expect it at this point.
Yeah, we should call it cat corner.
Cat
in the
corner,
comment
yeah.
corner when the cats join. But yeah, so like my comment sections are actually pretty good. I mean, I do get you get all the usual types of people, and I tend to have a don't feed the trolls sort of policy. But yeah, so what I've done is I haven't picked out a specific comment, but what I've done is picked out a comment trend, because I tend to notice that with my videos, particularly, you've got a bigger video, you get lots of comments coming through, and you do start to notice certain trends emerging, and you kind of realize, oh, actually, like, I've had 20 comments and 7 of them basically say the same thing. But the trend I've picked out is a bit more abstract than that, but it's people who type a comment that is clearly in response to the title of the video or even just the thumbnail itself. And it's always a really funny one to see, because I mean, you play with clickbait, you get burned. You bring that on yourself when you have a bit of a provocative title. But I've always just thought it's funny because to make a comment, you have to click into a YouTube video and you have to let it play. And so even if you click into a video, you've seen a title or a thumbnail that annoys you so much, you need to click into the video, have it playing as you type your comment, presumably, and then post your comment, and then either immediately leave the video or keep watching the video and decide, actually, my comment doesn't relate to the title or the substance of the video. Yeah, it's just a funny thing that I see happen quite a lot in my videos, and I just don't quite understand the mindset behind it.
I honestly think some...
Yeah, no, it is just that, isn't it?
I think a lot of YouTube commenters have
TSD.
short-term memory loss, because it feels like I've had this happen where multiple times the same person will comment on the same video multiple times, and it's really clear that they're just watching as they're
as they're going.
They're watching. They're putting down their.
They're like live vlogging in the comments. I've had that.
But I actually got this is kind of a small segue almost. I got a couple of those comments recently, because yesterday, as of recording this podcast, I released the first video I'd done in a while about Gravity Falls, and I entitled that video "Gravity Falls Doesn't Need a Season 3." And essentially, the premise was like, hey, Gravity Falls was a good show, but it ended after 2 seasons, and the creator wanted it to end, and like it had a good ending and everything. Like, we don't need to, dig it up for a 3rd season on Disney Plus or whatever. And I got multiple comments being like, but I want more Gravity Falls. I want there to be more Gravity Falls there. Yes, and I even got one comment that just said, yes, it does. It's like, man, this isn't a text I'm sending you. This is the title of like an essay.
Yeah. I love the yes, it does comments. Like, I guess it does make more sense to think of them as responding just to the title or the thumbnail. But like, I get those sometimes, and in my head, it's always like, okay, so I've got an opinion. I've just spent 2,000 to 5,000 words trying to convince you of that opinion, and you're clapping back with like a no, or like a no you. It's just the idea that they're watching it to the end and then typing that in makes me smile a bit. It probably isn't true. It probably is just title on thumbnail response syndrome. But I didn't even realize you dropped that video. I said this to you earlier, and this is kind of proving it. I had a weird experience yesterday. I was out of town, and wherever I was staying, there was this massive storm, thunder, lightning. About half the sky came down in terms of rain, and then until I left and got on the train to come back here today, there was no internet, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no mobile data, there was nothing. It was bizarre. But yeah, that's cost me a TSD Talks video watch on release day experience. So,
well, it had spoilers for the show that I've been trying to get you to watch for the last 2 months. Yeah. So it's
that's
probably
all right. I'll just
probably
spoil
for
the
best.
show. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, but yeah, that's definitely a really it's a really funny trend. Just like
It's a good trend. It must be like a quarter of all comments. Honestly, I think it must be.
It does really add up. It depends on the title of the video and the subject
Yeah.
a little bit. But yeah, you see it quite a lot. And then kind of an extension of that is people who haven't read the other comments, and it's not... I don't expect people to read every comment on the video, but it's more... This tends to happen when you inevitably have a mistake in the video and the internet can't wait to point it out.
Albert Camus.
And you'll have someone leaving a comment correcting you on the point, which is fair enough. That's a totally valid comment to make. But it's like, I'll have videos that have been online for 2 years that have, 1,500 comments or whatever. And people will still today post a comment saying, oh, you got this bit wrong. And it's like, do you really think not one of these other comments is saying that?
Yeah,
Or
it's
are
like you
sitting there
care
being
enough
like,
about this to scroll all the way down here and type this out, but you don't care enough to scroll twice more and see the 3 other people saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if they type their comments and go, "Wow, I did a great job," like
Yeah.
correcting them,
Educating
on that.
the
But
world.
Anyway, I don't mind the comments because they are a lot of the comments, and if you're going to leave a comment on my video, then thanks. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Another comment that I like is
It's funny just seeing them read through.
is like the personal essays that people write about like their own thoughts on something.
Yeah.
And like,
Tangentially related thing, and they're
like-
just kind of tethering it to your video.
I'm not even saying like a thing of like relating to the, if someone comments on something that's in the video, it's like, I had a really interesting thought about that, and this is what I think about that, and blah, 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 blah. I like those. Those are cool. Like,
that's fine. Yeah,
they're
those are
forwarding
fun
the
to read.
conversation. But like, I'm talking about like, I'm going to go back to my old punching bag of comment section and talk about my High Top Films
High
video.
Top.
Yeah. Pentex, do you know about this video?
Yeah, I think you guys have mentioned it on the podcast before, and
Okay.
I've seen it on your channel. I watched your X-Men video. I don't think I've seen the High Top one, but I
don't really recommend it.
It's the biggest one on your channel, right?
It has a reputation,
Yeah,
Right.
it's like a video I spent some amount of effort on just debunking, like it's not even really debunking, it's like just kind of arguing against another creator's YouTube video. I probably wouldn't make it now, but one of the things that I commonly got in those comments is that the thesis of the comments was, the thesis of the video was talking about like this one guy's criticism of the MCU Spider-Man trilogy and the issues I found with that specific set of criticism. But it felt like people took that video as like a springing off board to write their own essays in the comments about their own thoughts about the Spider-Man franchise as a whole. I got so many comments that are like they're always like one long rambling paragraph about how, I actually don't really agree with High Top's things, but personally what I thought about the MCU Spider-Man movies was that blah, 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 this thing happened and blah, 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 and, and that's why I really think that, like, Industrial Revolution, and it's... It's like, man, I want to have a conversation here. I'm not asking for your, high school book report about these fucking Marvel movies. I just want you to like talk about like what I said in the video or what I talk about in the video, maybe, please.
Well, those are always the comments I see, and I'm like, dude, make your own YouTube channel. Like,
Exactly.
This is exactly why I started my channel. It's like, you clearly have a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn them into something of your own. There's no reason you can't.
Or even just like write essays. Like just like you don't even have to like post.
There is a
them
time and a
publicly.
place for loose kind of flow of consciousness rambles on a topic, and YouTube is exactly that place. But maybe in the video player, Maybe
Yeah.
that's the best.
Yeah,
location.
it's like you've already written the script. Like that's half the work.
Just hit
now
record,
just read
baby.
it on a camera.
Or even just like rant
Just hit record
about
and then
it.
spend 12 hours editing audio. You know what I mean? Whew.
Just rant about it on like your Instagram story or whatever, or like on TikTok. Like recorded one of those videos
Yeah,
of
that's a
people
very
yelling in their
hinged
cars.
thing to do. I love those videos. It's my favorite genre. If I ever do a face reveal, the entire channel is just going to be that. I'll have to get a car first, of course.
Have you guys seen that video of Jeremy CinemaSins like ranting in a car after he went and saw like the live action Winnie the Pooh movie?
I make it a thing to try and see as little CinemaSins related content as I can.
It's completely
so
fair.
that one passed me by.
But there's like a really funny video. It's just really funny to me because he's like so upset about this like movie about I think it's called Christopher Robin. It was like I remember watching it. It was like fine or whatever, but he's just so upset about this Winnie the Pooh movie. And he's like sitting sad in a car as he's driving, and he'll randomly just like go be silently, and then he'll just like start talking about something that upset him, and then he'll like be quiet for a bit. Then he'll start thinking about something else, and like you can see the cars moving in the background and like him going through lights and stuff. Funny.
I've had car rides and trips home from the movies like that with friends, like, you know, me and a friend.
Yeah.
Rebel Moon was a classic example, but I'm thinking there was like a Robin Hood movie with Russell Crowe that came out in like 2010 or something, and my friend and I went to go and see it, and yeah, we it was probably about 45 minutes to get from the movie theater back home, and we spent that entire car ride just complaining about the movie exactly like that. We'd go silent for a second, and then we'd be like, oh, and that scene where this happened, and it was a great car ride, but we weren't filming it because it was 2010, and also like that's
Didn't have that content mindset. It's always an indictment of a movie friendship. When the drive home is more memorable than the movie. Isn't that the only thing I remember?
The only thing I remember about that movie was the fact that we talked to. Yeah, it's kind of. I can't even remember the details of the movie, but it is essentially trying to be like Gladiator, but
the gritty reboot of Robin
structured
Hood.
around Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why didn't that work? Who can say?
I think the car ride home after watching Argyle was like that with my brother. Setting recent
I think if I've ever had anything like. I think I went to see Batman v Superman with my family because obviously I was still a teenager at this point. I think I went with my mum and my brother, and I think the car ride home there was one of those sort of things where we were all kind of dumbfounded, trying to figure out the kind of situation there. Yeah. Well.
Anyway, do you have a comment, Pillar?
I got a couple. I've got 3 comments which in fact make up their own mini trend, examples of a larger trend actually. So I'll just throw these at you guys soon. Not soon, quickly. I've got a headache. I'm saying the wrong words a bit. Hopefully we won't have a kerfuffle like last time. But okay, so this one is a comment on the X-Men 97 video I did. Yeah, that was a good time. Dora Spring M90 says, Harris, David, Taylor, Jose, Thompson, Jennifer. And then I can give you another example. On another video, Olivia Humphrey says, Smith, Deborah, Taylor, Mark, Moore, Jennifer. And then I can give you another example. Robert Del Bellis on The Real Villain of Invincible Season 2 says, Williams, Dorothy, Johnson, David, Brown, Donald. Now, I don't know what's going on here. Do you guys? Have you had these? I saw someone say on a Discord server me and TSD are a member of. I saw someone else bring this up, that people are just commenting random kind of first name combinations. Is this something you guys have come across yet?
I saw one on my X-Men video. I just deleted it because it seemed like spam, but
I haven't come across this at all. That sounds bizarre.
It's bizarre. It's ominous. Yeah.
Do the initials spell out a word?
I don't think so. This one's WDJD. This one says, but this would be what would Jesus do? But then I don't know what BD means afterwards. Maybe it's a gorilla.
It's the answer to the question. It's like what would Jesus do? ? BD is the answer. Bang dudes. I guess.
All right. Yeah, I guess that tracks biblically.
But it also reads like it might be like a list of people who are going to die in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, like they're definitely. Yeah, I hope I don't. Keep scrolling through these. Someone's saying like Richard, John, Bethany, pillar of garbage. That's when I have to start worrying. If I see my name on one of these.
Maybe it's like your, like grandmas on Facebook where they tag their friends.
They try to search.
They're like, oh, Dorothy, you should watch this video. But
yeah, no, maybe it's just the wholesome old people. The old people have discovered YouTube. That's what this is.
Yeah, but most likely answer is that it's like a bot, like trying to farm something.
But that's the other thing. I've been thinking about this. Obviously, it's some sort of spam, right? Some sort of bot's doing some sort of spam. But with a lot of spam, you can kind of get the idea behind it. If it's like the Twitter porn bot spam, they want you to click their links. They want you to think that there's something in their bio, and whether there is or whether there isn't, they profit from getting you on that link and getting you the malware or whatever. But I can't click on these list of names, and it's What's going on here? I don't have the whole picture, and that makes me feel uneasy and nervous, like a bear that's just been hit by a car driven by a presidential hopeful.
Maybe it's the names of all the animals that RFK's hit and killed.
It could be. There's enough of them.
It's come full circle. Maybe he was thinking about the podcast after all.
Sending coded messages.
He was playing the long game.
I like
He
the
had that
implication
content mindset
that a
background.
whale's name is just Robert.
Like Ryan or something, yeah.
Ryan the whale. But Pog, you made a video, I think, a couple of months ago looking at those kind of AI-generated summary
Oh, the summaries,
comments, right?
yeah.
Which I've seen on only one or two of my videos before. But you do get comments every now and then that it's clearly written by some sort of AI, and you're wondering, what's the purpose of this? Like, is this an output, or is this you just trying to like train yourself somehow? But I think I think compared to some other social media websites, YouTube is pretty good at keeping a lid on the kind of worst of those sorts of bots. But I think the bigger a video gets and the bigger a channel gets, the harder it is to keep that sort of stuff out.
The automatic filters are pretty good,
Yeah, I can see it being some sort of bot, like testing, like just, if the bot leaves 100 comments that are totally fine and totally innocent, then maybe that makes it easier for it to leave more of a spammy one. But
you've got your brain engaged. I'm just trying to figure this out and button up against the brick wall. You've got that bird's eye kind of view of the situation. We should have you on to analyze more bizarre trends. Maybe there is some logic behind them.
Sometimes you get a comment on a video that's clearly they've clearly been watching a video and then it's gone on to autoplay the next video while they're writing their comment. Those. And so you get a comment about a completely different video, and sometimes it's quite well thought out.
It's like, just wish I knew what you were talking about, then I could get on board.
I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting point about something.
Yeah, you got me convinced. Sign me up. Just let quickly, what is it what's the crusade we're going on?
Speaking of like
YouTube's a crazy place.
Random like AI things. This is not the same kind of AI at all, but I just was reminded of like I saw like a clip on social media of a teacher talking about how like her kids keep sending in like ChatGPT essays, and some of them are really bad at hiding it. And she showed an example of like a kid who had an essay that started with, "Yes, all right, here you go. Here's an essay on the Great Gatsby."
Here's the prompt.
Yeah. Wild.
I'll tell you what,
AI
before
revolution.
I throw the comment corner spotlight over to you, I do have one we won't have to discuss and analyze. I just want to read it out. This is on my recent video, Beyond the Griftiverse. Guy is saying, the irony, of course, being the most laughable US government disinformation spewed in this video. It's classic dimwit foreign/Russian influence gold. It has every dumb trope of the thing in it. Classic, love it. And that comment is by @Disinformation_hoax. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that very reliable information. Disinformation hoax.
You can't make this stuff
gonna
up.
pour over that one. Yeah.
It might have been a bot comment.
No, because there were more like that. It's just this guy had the most on the nose name.
I'm kind of burning through my funny X-Men comments because it's kind of lost its time in the spotlight for right now. But I do have one. It did bring a lot of attention to some of my other videos, and one of the things that I got this is part of like the thing I was talking about like people just giving their random thoughts on things. Pentex, have you seen the movie Tick Tick Boom?
Is that the one with Andrew Garfield?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I have.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favorite movies, and a couple years ago, in 2022, I made a 1 year later video about it. That was basically just like, hey, this was this movie I watched a while ago, and this is what I wanted to talk about it. And I kind of like poured my heart into that one and talking about how like this is like movie meant a lot to me, like from a creative standpoint and like from the story it had behind it and whatnot. And so I got this comment from some person who had clearly been like driven by my X-Men video because it was around the same time I got a huge source of traffic from that. And this person, Matt Triano, just says, "Good movie, bad title."
Great.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Probably
the title
not-
is explained in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, a pretty good title, I would say. But yeah, maybe take that up with Netflix or basically anyone other than you, TSD.
You take it up with Jonathan Larson, the person that the movie's about, who named it that when he when he made the original.
So I just blanked for a minute that it's from a play.
He made the original
Musical
play
even.
in like 1990, and
Yeah.
then the movie's about him.
Yeah, that
and
ship has
play.
sailed. The title ship has sailed.
Like if he like the dude died from like 30 years ago. You know, the person to complain to is gone. It's like someone comes up to like, you know, talking about Tolkien's work, and they're like, you know, I really liked that old.
Yeah, just
that
a few
book.
notes.
But I thought
just a few notes here, Mr. Professor Tolkien.
I feel like the title The Hobbit is a pretty bad title because there's a lot of hobbits in Middle Earth. So, you know, maybe like a little bit more
Yeah,
specific.
it's like, can we narrow it
Maybe
down a
the
little
dragon,
bit?
you know?
Who
There's fewer
is
of
the
those.
Lord of the Rings?
Now that's yeah.
Yeah, and that's also the sort of comment where it's kind of an example of like a criticism where it's like, okay, how you can't really respond to that. Like that doesn't really, it doesn't actually say anything. It's kind of, you
it's
just
like-
kind of say it, and then
It's
you're
just
like,
subjective. Like
what do you want me to say?
What is
Like,
your response? Yeah, okay, I'll see what I can do.
cool, man. Like I'm glad you like left engagement
pass it
on
on.
my video, but like I can't help.
Yeah, it's like you can say, I didn't like the title because X. I think it would have been better if it was called Y. But it's like, good movie, bad title. You're like, okay, what's like,
you. I will
where to
definitely
from
do
now?
this.
Like,
I will do
duly
something
noted.
very important with this comment. I'll put it right up on the fridge.
Although to be fair, it would be more of a baffling comment that could actually be an interesting discussion if he said the opposite. If he said, bad movie, good title.
Yeah.
that provokes some conversation.
Well, now I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah, like, huh. Are you saying that if the title was on a different story, it would have worked? Kind of a thing?
Maybe they're saying that you know, there's not enough tick in the movie, you know?
True.
Well, I think there's a lot of tick. Maybe there's not enough boom in the movie. Maybe they're thinking the boom should have been in the movie rather than kind of almost implied, you know?
You know what is a title for for like a show that I don't think really reflects, you know, it's something that I think doesn't really help reflect the show. Is the title for The Boys? For some reason, I just really don't think that the title The Boys really reflects
Well, I
what
mean,
the
there's
show
some
The
girls
Boys
in
is
there
about.
as well, so it
That
should
too.
be the boys and girls. That's what it should be, you know, logically, thinking logically.
It's not even that far into the first season that like girls get introduced to their team. So like being called The Boys after that is still just weird.
I've not seen it. Are there any non-binary folks in there? Because then it could be the boys, girls, and their non-binary friends. That's a title that grabs you, you know?
Yeah. They're not in the main show, but in the spin-off show Gen V, there's a character who's I want to say gender fluid,
Maybe they
because
should have called it Gen they, them.
yeah, that's a great title.
Yeah, I'm here all week, folks.
I don't really have a lot of other commenting trends or specific items to talk about. Honestly, we probably could just move on to the questions section, the Discord Q&A. I've got some good questions for us.
Yeah, let's get to them.
What is your favorite superhero? How long is a piece of string? Where do we go when we die? Why won't my son talk to me anymore? Questions.
All right, so I'm looking at this now, and it occurs to me we might have answered this question already before, but if not, even if we have Pentex on who can give a different answer, and if not, it'll just be similar to something we've answered before. But from Kevin Douglas, what would be the preferred end goal for your YouTube career? Do you think that YouTube is more of a means to an end or a permanent fixture in your lives?
That's a good question. I don't think we have talked about that before. Shall we carry the guest spotlight kind of tradition forward to the question segment too?
Sure.
You want to take this one, Pentex?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of, I feel that's the sort of question that YouTubers always get asked and ask of themselves. I don't know. For me, I don't really have an end goal, and I think that's because the goalposts just keep changing.
Yeah.
it's like get 100 subscribers, get 1,000 subscribers, like get a video with X number of views. It just kind of, the goalposts keep shifting. And I think if you set some sort of, I guess, like numerical target or whatever, you'll get there and then kind of be like, okay, now what? So I always just try and just make, it sounds a bit cheesy, but I try and make each video better than the last in some way, or at least try something a bit different, or try to improve on a particular area. So for me, it's more, and again, because it's not like a career for me, it's still a hobby. I just try to keep doing it in a way that I find enjoyable. And I think so long as I continue to enjoy it, then for me, it's doing its job. And yeah, the views and the numbers are all nice, but that will never be enough, I think. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, the equation can change. It's easy to get disheartened when you do put a lot of time and effort into a video and it doesn't do so well. And I have been doing it for long enough that aspects of it feel pretty tedious. Audio editing probably being the main one. So it does take a lot of time and effort, and I think you do get some satisfaction when you put a lot of time and effort into something, and then it resonates with people and they enjoy it. So I think so long as that continues to happen, and so long as I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, then yeah, I'll keep doing this. But yeah, I don't think there's really an end goal as such, because even if I set one, it would change when I got there.
Yeah.
I'm in a kind of interesting spot because YouTube really isn't my end goal kind of a thing. This is actually something I've been thinking about recently. I've talked about on the podcast before, and Pillar, you know this. I made a show over at my college TV station, and that was like one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, because I've found that I really like telling stories and being creative through video. And so I feel like if I got like soft locked into doing YouTube as a career for the rest of my life, like I wouldn't be upset, but I kind of want to eventually like maybe get to a point where I'm like making movies, making TV shows, and maybe that's all going to be on YouTube. But like I want my end goal to have like YouTube be more of a side project, or maybe like a way to keep the lights on or something. It potentially, or maybe just stay a hobby at some point. But I don't ever really see this as like my main goal in life. But
do you see the kind of making the TV show side? Do you see that from kind of a writing point of view, a director, editor? Like, where do you see, like, what aspect of the TV side could you see yourself working in?
Yeah, because you've kind of done all of that before, haven't you, TSD?
Yeah, I was the writer director for that. I guess the showrunner for that series, and I think what I would really like to do is just be in the position where I can, be a head creative on some kind of project that gets an audience, kind of a thing. Not because I want to be like famous. I don't really care about like being famous or being known or whatever, but I want to create something that reaches a lot of people, and like, because like I think about like TV shows and movies and stuff that have really reached me in my life and have left an impact on me and my personality, and how I want to be able to give that feeling to someone else. I guess I've never thought about it that way before, but that is kind of how I feel. I want to be able to like be in a position where something that I did helped make like some like 13-year-old like kid who wants to make movies someday feel like they could do something, or want to spark that passion in someone else. And part of something I kind of realized recently is I don't have to do that through traditional media. Like I don't have to like go to Hollywood and whatever. I could do something like what Joel Haver does, where he just like has like a steady income from Patreon and from a backlog of like YouTube sketches. And so he just makes movies on his YouTube channel. He just posts them with his friends. And like, that seems like a good gig to me, but I'd also, wouldn't mind getting, like, if HBO dropped in one day and said, hey, here's like a contract to show run a show, you can write the pilot and then, come back to us, I'd swipe that up in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and I do think that there is I think there is kind of a pathway to that through YouTube. Like, YouTube does still have space for, I think, particularly things like comedy sketches and stuff. You got channels like Man Carrying Things and Pitch Meeting and stuff like that. But also, like, in terms of working more creative storytelling into videos, I think there is scope to do that. Like, Patrick Willems is one of my favorite YouTubers, and he doesn't do it as much anymore, but like a few years ago, each of his video essays was bookended with like this fictional narrative that was completely unrelated to whatever the video was about. And he always used to say in comments and podcasts and stuff that he knew that wasn't necessarily the best for his channel in terms of capturing new viewers and stuff, but he did it because for him, the creative storytelling side was more interesting than the video essay, and he kind of figured out a way to be like, I can be a video essayist on YouTube, but I also get to make my short film on the side. Like, I can lure in an audience with the analysis, but keep them sticking around for that. And I think there are ways to do that sort of thing, definitely. That build the more creative side into it.
I don't mean to downplay like that kind of element. So I'm sorry if it came across that way. Because I think that I guess part of it is that one of my my venues into doing that kind of creative space is through the YouTube space, especially with incorporating stuff like that into my videos. You said you saw my X-Men thing, and I've talked about this before on the podcast a lot, so I might just be repeating myself, but I liked doing the storytelling element in that, where I set up a narrative around the X-Men timeline and some kind of sketch thing going on there. But I like setting up storylines like that, and I like setting up those moments that happen where things like dominoes are placed throughout the runtime of the video, and they slowly get knocked over until there's a big climax at the end. I really love it when videos do that because it feels like I'm watching a movie. And it feels like...
And it doesn't even have to be in a totally narrative sense. Like, I've done that a couple of times, where those dominoes are sort of more kind of analytical points that are being glossed over, and then the big reveal, oh no, those were relevant the whole time. But there's a lot of scope to do that narratively. It reminds me of my Over the Hedge video, where I kind of did that a little bit. If I was a face camera YouTuber, I would have been doing the whole TSD time traveler shtick there.
Yeah, it's like a. I guess I don't want to sound like I'm ungrateful or like would hate to be doing YouTube for the rest of my life or whatever, because I wouldn't. I like doing this, and I wouldn't mind doing it for a long time. But I guess just like if you're asking me my pie in the sky aspirations, I want to I want to be a director. Like, that's the big thing. I want to be like a movie director. That's like been my dream ever since I was little.
Yeah.
So
I don't know where I sit on this, because I think it would be I know saying this is problematic because, making it doesn't really exist, as we've discussed before, even in this episode. But I think if I were at a point where I had a steady enough income from Patreon or whatever, that I could kind of do YouTube at my own pace, because I'm still not quite there. I still have to get videos out to make enough, more, maybe faster and more often than I would like. I think I'd have a clearer vision of what my answer would be at that point, because, YouTubing was never, I guess it was my dream when I was 12, but after that I wanted to be an actor, then I wanted to be a writer, then I wanted to be a musician, and I've never really put necessarily all or even any of those other dreams completely to bed. My pie in the sky thing would be, hey, I'm just here at my book signing, then I'm going to jet off and headline Glastonbury, then maybe, while I'm between tours, I'll record another video essay. I think that would be my pie in the sky thing. But what I can say is that I don't know if YouTubing is going to be the end goal or not. That depends so much on the future of the platform. It's a question my family asks me a lot more than, probably viewers even think about. It's something I think about. But what I can say definitely is that the end, even if YouTubing is the end goal, even if that's what I'm doing in 10, 15 years time, it's not going to be like now. It's going to be better than now, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to be more ambitious. That's all I can say for with certainty. And I don't know what form that's going to take, but, you know, some form.
Yeah. I got another comment that kind of is, I guess, in sort of a similar vein. Another question but it's more related to like the TV movie things. It's from Not Quite Cool, who gives us a lot of great questions, by the way. Not Quite Cool asks
shout out, Not Quite Cool one time.
But anyway, he says, you're granted complete IP control of one character / group of characters and a sizable budget to make a TV or film show based on them. What do you pick? Or no, who do you pick and what are you making?
I don't know. Do either of you have an answer for this off the bat that you can give while the other two of us think?
Off the bat for me would be James Bond. That's probably quite an obvious answer for me. But it's also, like, it's a double-edged sword because, like, I obviously have a load of pie-in-the-sky dreams of what I'd like to do with the character and what my perfect Bond film would look like. But as a fan, I think if you're involved in the creative side, all of a sudden, I don't know, can you continue to enjoy that series? And also, what if there is, what if you put your heart and soul into a character and then the fan base that you are a part of disagrees with that for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden you're hated and everyone thinks you hate this character.
Whoa, are you?
Like, no,
is your name Ryan Johnson? What?
Yeah.
Classic example of that.
No, that's interesting though, because like even just making videos on something, if you go deep enough into like the analysis and research of a piece of media you love, there is a point where you kind of have to like, you kind of have to unplug from the matrix and you can never quite come back to that thing the exact same way, I think. I know that with some of the stuff I've done, the longest video essays about, or some of the stuff I wrote about for my literature course in uni and stuff, like when you put that amount of thought into something, you can never enjoy it quite as sort of naively as you once could.
Yeah.
And I guess that is scaled up a lot if you're on the other side of the glass,
I think that if you'd asked me this question like 2 to 3 years ago, I would have without a doubt said Marvel. I would have said like I want to do like a Marvel hero. And I want to do something with this, like maybe do like a Spider-Man series or something like that. But now I don't really want to do that because it feels like it's such a messy universe. And it's a place where like messiness in the universe has consequences and has long-reaching implications that go out forward. Obviously right now what's on my mind is Gravity Falls a lot. So I wouldn't mind doing something with Gravity Falls, but I feel like the ultimately I would always be deferring to like what Alex Hirsch wants to do because he's like such a strong creative voice, and I would feel weird taking creative control of like his baby pretty much from him. But like Alex, if like you're looking for a successor, you could hit me up. But I guess what my answer now would be is, and part of this is because I've had a bit of distance from this piece of media for a bit. And so now I feel like I could approach it from less of just like I'm such a big fan lens and more of like okay, well, what can I do with this character? That'd be really interesting. I'd love to do like a series of Doctor Who. I would love to if you just like gave me like because I feel like Doctor Who is like the perfect
the keys to the kingdom. Yeah, let you cook.
Yeah, it's the perfect playground to mess around with because Doctor Who has like stakes and whatnot, but the continuity is already so loosey-goosey and fucked up and you mess around with that, like, whatever you do...
wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey is the adjective.
Right, yeah. Yeah, very wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. But the way I feel like is that even if you completely messed it up, you could easily just be retconned right out of existence. So, like...
Yeah, exactly, I was going to say.
It wouldn't be a big deal.
If you pretend the fans don't exist for a minute, there's kind of less pressure there because it's already been through everything. So, 20 years down the line... you're either going to be remembered really well or not really remembered.
Yeah, there's so much room for creativity too, because it's like kind of sci-fi, but also kind of fantasy, but also like it's kind of horror, kind of comedy, kind of whatever.
It's anything really.
All you really need to do is just like I think honestly the
All
biggest
you need to do is have a vision.
the
That's
biggest
it.
hurdle for me would be the fact that I'm not British, really.
Yeah. You can probably do
Yeah.
an accent. Hello there, I'm TSD. Let's go in the TARDIS.
I think with Doctor Who in particular, like even just being able to write a single self-contained episode, because like you say, it's such a sandbox, and every episode can be a different genre, it can tell its story in a different way, it can be in any sort of time period. So you really can, it's this kind of blank canvas that you can set any story against. But then you put in the Doctor and the companion and tell the story in that way. And being able to write, like, I think a self-contained Doctor Who episode would in some ways be more satisfying than trying to knit a season or multiple seasons together.
Yeah.
Like, I think this was Stephen Moffat's big thing. Like, he could write outstanding
Great
standalone
episodes,
episodes. But then the connective tissue
Doesn't
for
quite
his
come
run.
together in the best way.
Some people love it, but it wasn't
controversial
as strong
at the very
as
least.
just the individual episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I honestly and this is kind of cheating a little bit for me, because a little known TSD secret, my very first YouTube channel I ever had was me doing original Doctor Who content. Some people in my Discord server have already found the channel before without my input. So, even that's a lesson to you people. If you have any kind of online presence, people will be able to find stuff, even if you're really tiny. But I made like Lego Doctor Who animations, and I wrote original stories for them. I was like 12 or 13, so they weren't very good. But I think there's something about that. There's something about that universe and that sandbox that is really intriguing to me. That I think now that I'm not like a super fan of it, I still really love Doctor Who and I still love the thing. But I'm not like regularly watching the show. I haven't caught up on the newest season. But I feel like it's one of those shows or it's one of those franchises really where you can just jump in like that, and like it's like a playground that you can have. You'll still have like a lot of scrutiny put on you, a lot of whatever, because people are insane about anything that is even remotely popular. But you have there's less room. There's more room for error there.
Yeah. I don't have an answer. I've been racking my brains. I don't have an answer exactly to the question's brief. I'm struggling to think of what this would be in terms of like, fiction, TV, or film, or whatever. But if I can nudge the question's parameters a little, I can give you endless examples of like this in other media. Like it's regularly like a shower thought experiment that I do to pass the time. It's like, if I had the keys to the kingdom, like set me loose in Bethesda game studios, right? Make me the Elder Scrolls 6 Tsar, and I will make Elder Scrolls 6 fucking awesome. Because, hey, Bethesda, they might not these days. They got some silly ideas about writing quests and stuff. Let me loose in there. Make me like the one above all, the god. Give me like a whip to crack. Give me complete power, and I if it kills me, I will create something great there. And I there's the same with, whichever band or musician you want to talk about. Like, to my eternal shame, I am an Imagine Dragons fan. Asterisk. That asterisk being their
rough.
2 first albums are good. All right, their first 2 albums are good. Okay, trust me. Go listen to them if you don't believe me. The things they've put out since, utter slop. Their latest album in particular, I listened to it and it's like, how are you doing this when you have the budget you do? What is wrong with you? This is slop. But, it's something I've thought about. Like, lock them in the studio with me, and it might kill all of us, but I'll make them make a good album again. Because they've got it in them,
It's a wild.
But I don't know what
insight.
that would be for TV.
It's a really interesting insight into your psyche, Pillar.
You don't want to be in here, You wouldn't make it out alive. No one would. That's the common theme that's emerging,
Yeah. I think that the question of like whether or not fans should take charge of their stories is a very, very complicated one.
Higher
Because
fans. Yeah.
because like
the r/Star Wars Reddit cry.
yeah, because like the thing about that is that like there's so many storylines where you see like fans complain about, and they say, oh, these writers don't care about the story, and I feel like that's not always a bad thing, because I feel like if someone doesn't have an emotional...
you don't want to be so in the source that you kind of can't make the moves that need to be made because you're too attached to all the kind of minutia. Yeah.
Like going to Star Wars, like you think about like what's like off the top of your head, what's the best thing that Star Wars has put out in the last 5 years?
It's not something by Filoni is where I think you're going with this.
It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
by
Tony
a
Gilroy
mile.
was Tony Gilroy was like he I think he was kind of intrigued by the possibilities, but he was not a Star Wars fan, right? Was he before that?
Not really, no. He was just kind of like a guy. He was a writer who was hired onto it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
He's a good TV writer.
Like,
Yeah.
and then you hear like
Not a super fan.
You hear like Dave Filoni talk about like Star Wars, and he's like, Star Wars is basically his life, and like I'm happy for
loves
him
it so much.
I'm happy for him. Like he's got his dream.
Yeah.
But I also feel like he's making Star Wars for himself, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like he's making it for other people who have also like been lost in the sauce of like Star Wars fandom culture forever.
Yeah.
And that is kind of detrimental to trying to like when you're trying to make like a good story, because what you essentially I talked about this in my Star Wars video. I said that part of the issue is that what you're doing is relying on people's preconceived knowledge of these characters to do as like a substitute for actually writing compelling characters, because you're like, oh, that's Boba Fett, he was blah 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 in this thing. Oh, that's Ahsoka, she had this great character arc in this other show, so obviously she's a good character if I just plop her in here.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I guess it's a bit simplistic to put Filoni in this same category, but like when you go on the internet and you see someone saying, "Oh, the writers don't care, hire me, I'm a fan," and then you see in another post, "Hey, this is my pitch for property X," whatever it is. Without exception, their pitch is always dog shit.
Yeah, it's like
I remember seeing something that, and it was in the Star Wars fandom. I can't remember where I saw this, but some people were like complaining about whatever the latest show was, and one of them was like, "When are we gonna get like a really good Anakin Skywalker series?" And I was like, the prequel trilogy? Like famously the main character of it's just like, and you can tell in their head they were like, we want like Anakin Skywalker running around like killing people and stuff, and you're like, you got Anakin Skywalker's story pretty good. You got 3 movies, and
you got 3
TV shows.
You got 3 movies, a couple
No,
TV
they
shows, a
just need
bunch
to
of
listen
comics.
to the fans, though. They just need to listen to the fans.
Yeah, I had a little bit of exposure to this because I re-edited Obi-Wan Kenobi into a movie. But that was kind of coming from the point of view where it wasn't like, oh, the show wasn't made for the fans. It was just like, this show is not very good at telling the story it's trying to tell. And this is very obviously a screenplay for a 2-hour movie that has had an extra 3 hours worth of material foisted onto it. And it's like, if you cut all of that away, you would actually end up with a good story. I made the edit, and it turned out to be right, I think. I think the movie tells the same story in a much better way, but it's like, that's just bad storytelling. That's not because the creators weren't fans or
and like set like an r/Star Wars guy whose like biggest complaint is the fact that the Grand Inquisitor's head is the wrong shape or whatever the fuck it was. Let them loose in the editing system. I guarantee you their edit is not going to be as good as yours.
Yeah, I hate to keep bringing it.
That was the sort of stuff that people sorry, TSD, I'll just finish up this, but like that's the sort of thing that does drive you insane, where people's biggest issue with a show is the guy's head looks wrong or whatever, and you're like, that can be symptomatic of a wider issue in the story, but like the show is bad. Is the reason the show's bad isn't because he doesn't look like how he looks in the animated show. It's like the show is bad because the writing and pacing is terrible. Anyway, you're talking about Gravity Falls.
Yeah, I hate to keep bringing it back to it, but I feel like the creators for that show had the perfect mindset with it, because the creator of the show, Alex Hirsch, he said basically he made the show for himself. But he also made the original characters and still had to tell the show, tell the story of the show for the first time. So he wasn't relying on like wiki knowledge or whatever of the people. But what I was listening to an interview where he was talking about, essentially he was being asked a question of like, there's this tie-in comic that you wrote for the show that's like made reference to this one thing that happened, and this one, it could be seen as addressing criticisms of a character in the show that the fan base has had for a long time. And what would you say that was what you were trying to do? Like, why did you want to try to address this like loud minority of people? And essentially his response was like, I didn't have that in mind when I was writing it. He like talked about how like what the entire creative process for writing that story, and the main goal was like, the main point was just like, if this happens to like fall into some kind of fandom narrative, it was completely unintentional. Like me and the team, we're not focused. We don't have like characters that like we're rooting for in our writing rooms that we're trying to assassinate to each other. We just want to tell like an interesting story, and we have the characters at hand that we have, and we try to mix them together to try and do something interesting. Cause that's the thing about fandom, the way that you perceive characters through fandom and the way you perceive characters through writing is that when you're perceiving them through fandom, you see them as like fully fledged human beings who you can like hurt the feelings of, and you can like, you know, baby girl of fire, whatever. And you can like think like, oh, that's, you know, like that's kind of they're like static characters that exist as that almost as real people. But when you're in the writer's room, they're more like tools for moving
like
the
a bundle of
storyline.
attributes. Yeah.
You know, they're a series of factors and puzzle pieces that you can put together in new and interesting ways to tell cool stories. And I feel like the biggest issue with most like fan pitches for stuff is that they treat these characters like static, you know, action figures.
Yeah, they
to
give
put
them too
together.
much respect.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was always pissed off with the Last Jedi doesn't respect Luke Skywalker. Last Jedi has a lot of problems. The fact that it doesn't treat Luke Skywalker like a god is not at all one of them. Like, that's one of its biggest strengths.
And it's the best argument for the fact that it does respect Luke Skywalker to the degree that a character should be respected. You know, it takes him seriously and it doesn't fucking... doesn't
Whatever.
wash his feet. I don't know. Like, we don't want to start talking about
you talked about The Last Jedi. You're going to get comments now.
Oh, we always...
Hey, you know,
it's
gotta pump them numbers up.
Yeah. I do have one more
We always
question.
find our way back to The Last Jedi. Yeah, all right.
All
Let's
roads lead.
Spray it at us.
It's like that one clip of Ryan Kimmel saying that they just always talk about The Last Jedi still after 7 years. You know what?
Yeah, when was the last Jedi video you made? Yesterday.
I
love these guys.
we make fun of them, but we're in this exact same boat. We're hypocrites.
Exactly. That's what my commenters like to tell me. So, you know, it must be true.
I did see a tweet that basically said, remember that time Rian Johnson made the best Star Wars movie and destroyed American culture forever?
Yes.
Think about that a lot.
They ate.
Yeah.
That tweet ate.
And now he's making the best detective movies.
With James Bond. See, we came full circle.
Yeah. We wrap it all together. I have one more question from
One more
Buster.
question. Let's get it done.
This is kind of a more lighter one. For the next episode, hello PoGcast boyos. How are you feeling about 2024 as a year for movies? Are you liking it? Are you not? What are some highlights? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, Buster.
Thanks for the question. I need some time to gather my thoughts. Anyone else want to leap forward with this?
I haven't been watching a lot of movies this year. I've been really busy.
I've not seen a ton of them. No, I feel like a fraud. I'm a fake movies YouTuber.
Feels like it's like every other year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, last year was a really good year for movies.
Yeah.
In a way that we haven't had since before the pandemic, I think. It was the first time it really felt like not only were a wide range of movies being made and released theatrically, but they were also good.
Yeah.
And it felt like those kind of years of disruption had kind of come to an end. And I think it's harder to assess this year. And a lot of the movies that I've watched this year that I've really enjoyed, I realized actually came out last year or the year before or something like that. But yeah, there haven't been as many movies released in the cinema this year so far that I've been like, I have to go and see that in the cinema. I mean, I think for me, Dune 2 was the highlight.
Oh yeah, Dune 2.
I mean, that was earlier this year. But that goes to show, it was kind of came out in March, I think, and that already feels like a long time ago.
A while ago.
Yeah,
right?
and that was supposed to come out in 2023, but it was delayed because of the writer's strike.
more evidence for the 2023 being the good movies year.
If I discount Dune 2, which, it's really arbitrary. You don't really have to discount it. But if I discount Dune 2, I think that the best movie I've seen this year that came out this year, probably by far, was Challengers earlier this year.
Okay.
I loved Challengers, there aren't bad. It's not like a year of bad movies necessarily. I mean, you've got some real stinkers I didn't really like Madam Web, and there was
that was awful.
There was but also there was movies that I haven't even seen, the new Borderlands movie, which seems just fucking awful. And apparently the Crow remake is also pretty bad. But those don't feel like once in a generation bad movies, They just kind of feel like bad movies that just are kind of par for the course. Except for Borderlands. Borderlands seems genuinely just awful. Everything I've heard about it just seems worse and worse and worse, which is incredible. But I think that this is just I think that this year for movies isn't terrible, but it feels lackluster in comparison to last year just because of how good last year was. It makes me wonder if we're just kind of settling into an equilibrium after the pandemic, had a bit of a chokehold on movies being released for a bit.
Yeah, and I wonder if the strike has had a bit of a knock-on effect in terms of things that are still in production and everything. But yeah, Challengers is a great example. I think Civil War came out this year. You've had a few kind of mid-budget comedies as well. What's the Glenn Powell one? The Hitman?
Anyone But You.
Oh,
no, sorry.
Hitman.
Wrong one.
Not Anyone But You. The Hitman is actually a good example of Glenn Powell's comedic skills, unlike Anyone But You. And then I think Twisters did pretty well. You've had flops. Things like The Fall Guy, that Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt one, which was a very expensive movie, so it's not surprising that it didn't.
I heard it was really good. I haven't
its
seen
money
it
back, but it was
pretty good.
Was good.
I mean,
it was. Yeah, you go, Pillar.
I was just going to say, that's one of the... I've really not been to the pictures much this year, partially because going to the pictures is time, and partially because, last year I tried to do some of the go to the movie, see a new movie, make a video about it while it's still kind of fresh, but either they didn't do well or I wasn't able to turn them around fast enough to make them do well. So I've fallen off a bit on the going to the movies. One of the ones I went to was The Fall Guy. Fun time. It lampshades a lot that having a good third act is hard, and then it has a really flabby third act, and I don't know how to feel about that. It's are they trying to be really, really cute about it? Does
it was quite a meta movie in a lot of ways, but I had fun with it. It wasn't as laugh out loud funny as I thought it would be, but I had a good time with it. And
sure.
Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt are two of my favorite actors working today, and you could put them in a milk commercial, and that'd be good.
That'd be watchable.
Yeah, it was a fun movie.
I think that kind of takeaway of 2024 is not a bad year for movies necessarily, but it's just it seems like it's got a lot of it's got a lot of good, it's got a lot of bad, it's got a lot of pretty typical kind of layout of things.
And the streaming movies are slop as usual.
God. But it's
Damsel came out this year. Why are we not talking about Damsel?
I had forgotten that Damsel existed. Honestly.
The Millie Bobby Brown. The
big movie is going to be, and it might be out by the time this podcast goes out, but Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola,
of course,
insane passion project.
The make or break 2024.
That is going to be an event.
So let's throw it back to you, Pillar of Garbage podcast listener. Have you seen Megalopolis? Was it good? In that case, 2024, a spellbinding year for Kino. Was it bad? Slop all around. That's the official stance of the Pillar of Garbage podcast.
Yep.
You heard it here first.
All right. Well, I think that's the last of the questions.
Before we wrap up, I do actually have a question. And it's a very important question. I've got it written down here. I just want to make sure I get it right.
Can I guess what it is?
It's for you, Pillar.
Okay. Wait, you say it, and then I'll tell you if I had it right.
Yeah, can you pronounce media literacy?
Yeah, that was my guess, actually. Good question. Let's see. Let's try it live on air. 3, 2, 1. Media literacy.
Can you use it?
Guys, I did it.
I'm clapping. It's not picking up on Discord. But
While
it
I
picks up on my
possess
mic.
media literacy, I do not possess standard literacy. I
Hey,
almost
you did
stumbled
it.
a bit on the first one. Yeah.
It's a big
I
moment.
don't. I still don't know what
Cut that
happened
into the last episode, and
Yeah.
you'll be fine.
there. Good question.
You knew it was
Highlight
coming.
moment of the podcast.
You
for
knew it was
sure.
coming. I sat on it for 2 hours. You knew it was
I
coming.
will not. I will not ever live that down.
And
it's
we
been a fun time.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
And well, guys,
Do you have anything to plug, Pentex?
No, YouTube's where I'm at. Yeah, you can find all of my videos there. Yeah, I don't know when the next one's going to come out. It's a long one, and it's taking me a bit longer than normal. But there's 50 other videos you can watch in the meantime.
Yeah,
So
nice little
yeah,
back
check
end.
it out.
well, it's
While Pentex cooks.
I'm having a fun time being, the dead remains of
you're the whale.
RFK's. Yeah, I'm the whale. I'm still trapped to the car, but I do think it's time that for us to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. We post new episodes every other Friday, so don't forget to follow us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. If you're on YouTube, toss us a like if you liked and comment if you had any thoughts. If you're on any other podcast platform, leave us a review. And no matter what platform you're on, feel free to share the show with anyone you think might like it. All those help support the show and ensure future episodes. You can find Pentex Productions as Pentex Productions on YouTube. You can find Pillar on YouTube, Twitter, and Blue Sky Social, all under Pillar of Garbage. He also has a Discord server that should be linked in the description where you can have your own questions on the hashtag PoGcast Q&A channel read on the pod. You can find me on TikTok, YouTube. I don't know why I said TikTok first. It's YouTube mostly. Instagram and all others under TSD Talks. We also both have Patreon pages that, among other cool perks, let you listen to episodes of the show early. Allegedly. We haven't really been doing that recently. But usually just whenever we finish them, it can kind of range. And with that out of the way, I'm TSD Talks.
I'm Pillar of Garbage.
I'm Pentex Productions.
And this has been the Pillar of Garbage podcast.
Bye.